Buried deep within the Epstein files recently released by the DOJ, live hard-to-obtain troves of footage. Last week, we published hours of footage from dataset 10, videos seized from Epstein's electronic devices that offered a glimpse into his private world. Today, we're publishing 12 hours of footage from dataset 9. This collection traces more than a decade of law enforcement efforts to investigate him. Watched together, these videos provide a striking account of just how much was meticulously documented about Epstein's life and conduct from the time law enforcement began looking into him in 2005. One of the most important questions about this case remains the source of endless speculation. How is it that Epstein, who operated in plain sight and remained under the constant watch of law enforcement agencies, only found himself facing serious charges in 2019? This collection makes that question that much harder to ignore. We've published all of the footage from dataset 9, excluding only obvious duplicates and extensive prison CCTV recordings, which we link to in the show notes. You can watch it yourself. But if you'd rather not, here's what stood out to me. The oldest video file in dataset 9 dates back to October 2005. It is more than an hour-long VHS recording of Palm Beach police executing a search warrant at Epstein's Florida mansion as part of their very first investigation into allegations that Epstein was sexually abusing minors. After a police officer reads a copy of the warrant to someone who looks like a member of Epstein's staff, the camera begins to methodically make its way around the opulent mansion. There is a garage lined with high-end luxury cars, a sunlit kitchen outfitted with modern appliances. The airy living room overlooks a pool through floor-to-ceiling windows. Framed photos line the walls and cram the tables throughout the house. In one picture, younger-looking Epstein sits on a grassy hill next to Ghislaine Maxwell, his longtime confidant and later convicted co-conspirator. There are photos of Epstein and of other women, and occasionally of Epstein with other women. One picture, which sits on the small table by the living room couch, shows a young woman standing in Red Square in Moscow. Another shows Epstein cradling a young child. The camera eventually takes us to the hallways and rooms of the second floor, where image after image of naked or partially naked young women fill the walls. One black and white photo hanging in the hallway shows a very young, possibly preteen, girl bent over a table. Later, prosecutors would compare the pose to an old Coppertone ad.
Have you ever seen the old Coppertone commercials and the billboards? They actually used to be plastered all over, certainly Florida and other places where there's a cute little girl who appears to be 2, 3, 4 years old, and someone's pulling down at least a portion of her swimsuit, so she's exposing, or a small portion of her cheek is exposed.
Yes.
Okay. Is that what the picture of the young girl looked like? That is Mr. Epstein's guy?
More or less, yes.
All right.
The detective who conducted the house search noted in the report later that some of the naked females in the photos appeared to be the girls I previously interviewed. Most of the alleged victims attended nearby high schools. Some were as young as 14. In May 2006, at the conclusion of their year-long investigation, which involved testimonies from more than a dozen underage victims and other witnesses, the Palm Beach police prepared to charge Epstein with multiple counts of unlawful sexual activity with a minor. Instead, the case ended up in front of a grand jury, which indicted Epstein on a far narrower and relatively minor charge of soliciting prostitution. In 2008, Epstein was sentenced to 18 months in prison, which he mostly served in a work release program, which allowed him to leave the jail during the day. The set also features this grainy 46-minute clip from a 2009 FBI sting operation to recover Epstein's so-called Little Black Book, a 97-page address book featuring hundreds of prominent names tied to Epstein's social circle, as well as contact info for many of the underage girls he allegedly abused or trafficked. Epstein's former Palm Beach house manager Alfredo Rodriguez copied the contents of the book, but instead of turning it into the authorities, he tried to sell it to the lawyers representing Epstein's victims. The FBI intercepted the sale and staged this sting operation.
Yeah, this is a very, very sensitive and crucial information that it wouldn't get otherwise.
After the initial introductions and counting the money, Rodriguez produces a literal Little Black Book. He explains that there were numerous copies made of this book, which he helped destroy after the launch of the investigation into Epstein.
Who created this book?
Epstein himself.
This book was made by Epstein?
All his Mercedes, all his claims, they were supposed to have this. He made all of this disappear.
When pressed on his knowledge about Epstein having sex with underage girls, Rodriguez says it was an open secret.
You knew Epstein was having sex with these girls that this guy
I didn't see them, but of course you're an adult. I have two girls, all the Luella and the Gardner, and we saw and we looked the other way because once after he leaves the house, we will find condoms and they read that.
Rodriguez was later arrested, pled guilty to obstruction of justice, and in 2012 was sentenced to 18 months in prison, the same sentence Epstein had received for soliciting a minor for prostitution. Midway through the dataset is a silent, mostly black and white, 10-minute drone video that appears to capture Ghislaine Maxwell's arrest on the morning of July 2nd, 2020, almost exactly a year after Jeffrey Epstein was apprehended, and a little less than a year after he was found dead in his jail cell. White silhouettes, apparently marking FBI and other law enforcement agents, approached the front door. According to prosecutors, agents observed Maxwell through a window as she ignored their commands and fled to another room, shutting the door behind her. To arrest her, they had to force their way into the mansion. Maxwell was convicted in 2021 on 5 counts, including sex trafficking of a minor. She is now serving a 20-year sentence at a minimum security prison in Texas. Among the most recent videos in the set are the 2 short clips captured on November 2nd, 2021, according to the file's metadata. Running for about 12 minutes total, the clips walk us through the already empty Metropolitan Correctional Center in New York, the federal penitentiary where Epstein died 2 years earlier. The facility was shut down in the summer of 2021 amid a slew of problems, including lax security and crumbling infrastructure. The camera moves through the special housing unit on the 9th floor, eventually making its way to the cell where Epstein spent his final days.
Epstein's cell.
The room is exactly as bare and depressing as you'd imagine a particularly restrictive jail cell to be. Metal bunk bed, dingy white walls, and little else. The contrast is stark. In 2005, when allegations of Epstein's sexual abuse of minors were first reported, the police toured an opulent mansion. In 2021, investigators documented a narrow concrete cell where Epstein met his end. I watched hours of footage collected across 15 years of investigations. But what I'm still left wondering is why it took more than a decade between these videos. Why Epstein never faced a serious trial until the very end.